Purpose Highway is a space for discussions that drive connections toward people's highest purpose to build a better self and a better world. Join me for season 1, where I start to uncover stories of entrepreneurs and thinkers that are making an impact. I'm your host, Scott Mason, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everybody. It is Scott Mason, revving up for another ride down the Purpose Highway, and sitting next to me on the front seat is Michelle Kash. Michelle is a singer, a songwriter, an alt-pop performer. She's a philanthropist, and she's a women's empowerment and animal rights activist as well. Michelle, it is so good to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. So good to see you.
It is so good to see you too. And welcome to the Purpose Highway. You have lived a fascinating life. And so without further ado, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and dig right in so that people can find out all about you. Now, you've described your life in interviews that I've read about you as, particularly when you were younger, as globe-trotting. And you've said that your involvement with music when you were young was mostly as a listener. I'd love to hear in a little bit more detail what exactly your childhood was like. Like, what was it like being a globe-trotting kid? And what would a young girl like you have been expected to be when you grew up?
It's a very interesting question, Scott. I honestly think there's some... I've been thinking about this a lot lately about what's expected of us, like as kids or as girls, and how we're kind of, our education is set up, how it was set up. Like I'm reading the Feminine Mystique right now, which is fascinating and just kind of goes into the roles of women and how they were and how they are. And I think that, for me, personally, I think there were some mixed messages that I had. Like, it was like, you could do anything, but then there's this expectation of, you can do anything, but don't you want to do what everyone else is doing? Like, don't you want to get married, have children, which is beautiful, but also don't you want to maybe just kind of not go off the beaten path? And kind of, I think when I was a teenager, I kind of really got into this. All I could see was like people conforming in a way. And I really felt angry, I guess. I didn't want anyone really to tell me who I should be and how I should be. And it was kind of lonely at times, which is where kind of music came in and was there for me in that way. Yeah. But I think that you mentioned traveling. I think that other cultures, other people, a way of connecting with people on a different level that you don't just have walking down the street with someone who's like you. Right. So I think that all of those things and there is something I think that was inside of me that was always driving, like music or not, to be fully myself and to just kind of try to be as authentic as possible, which sometimes isn't always easy, So I think whatever that drive was, I had that kind of early to be like, well, that doesn't feel right, right. To just pretend. I couldn't pretend. And so I don't know where that came from or how, but that's still kind of who I am now.
How did your family react to that? Or was that something that you sort of kept to yourself?
I cannot keep it to myself, no matter what. I don't think I can keep anything to myself. I think it was difficult, honestly, with my family, and it still can be. My family is very different. I think that it was like my mother kind of used to say that I have two siblings, and she kind of had my brother and my sister, and then suddenly I came and was this like independent, own opinions, said no, said why, but why, but tell me why, but like I just want to understand. So that was kind of where that went. I think it was challenging for her at times, and for me, because I think that I just needed a way to have some kind of self-expression or creativity that didn't feel that was, coming out. Like my mother was very supportive of things that we wanted to try, but it had nothing to do with her. Like it doesn't, sometimes your self-expression doesn't, I mean, a lot of times it definitely has to do with your environment, I think.
Yeah.
And how nurturing and supportive that is, for sure. And sometimes it's just an inner angst or, something that, finding the right path and finding what is my voice and where's my creativity? Where does that come from? What do I want to say? What do I want to be?
Yeah.
How do I want to be in the world? And
Yeah. It's a fascinating challenge, and I have to say it's one that I can personally relate to myself, and I'm sure in another day and time we'll talk about that for hours. But I will say one of the things that I found interesting about reading, as I read more about your history and as I learned more about your own journey, was that it appears, based on what I read, that a lot of that began to change and a lot of focus began to develop after you got more involved in spirituality and meditation in particular. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that did develop kind of more through that. I think that my initial connection with spirituality was that feeling that I was just describing, mm-hmm. that I couldn't get out, I didn't understand. And I think that especially meditation offered this place to just be and rest and calm and quiet. As a child, and even now, I could get very overstimulated and like loud noises and sounds, and it's kind of like oversensory, which we're all having even more with our phones and everything.
Oh yeah.
And so, I know, right? And that kind of provided this recharge for me, which I think you and I have talked about in the past, like that introverted recharge.
Yeah.
And meditation was really that rest for me and that peace. And I kind of went really deep into that. And it really, I really think that it changed completely the path of my entire life and brought me to where I am.
I want to hear more about that. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
A, I can personally relate, but B, I bet a lot of people listening or watching can either totally relate themselves, or they might be thinking, wow, maybe that's something that I should try or learn a little bit more about. So talk to us a little bit about what it means to go very deeply into meditation, and about what shifted and how that happened for you and what it felt like as well.
Okay, which part happened? Like going into meditation? Or
and how it sort of changed your perspective and helped bring you a little bit closer into this new phase of your life.
Okay. I think for me, I was trying different types of meditation, and I also went on retreats, meditation retreats, silent retreats. I had a spiritual group that I these really deep connections with these amazing, wonderful people.
Wow.
Yeah, it was so lovely. And we still have a monthly meditation.
Really?
Group meditation over the phone now. Yeah, which is really wonderful.
Amazing.
It's so nice to connect with everybody, but we're connecting in silence, which is like, yeah.
For those of us who don't, oh no, go ahead, finish.
Yeah. Well, I think that I was going deep into that. You could also not overdose, I don't want to use that word improperly, but just over binge on spirituality and meditation. It could become, like you're just overindulging on everything. But I really, and I was doing that for a time, for sure. But in another sense, that's okay. Like if that's what someone needs in their life, like I really felt like this was saving me in some way. It was saving me. I had no way to process anything in myself. I had no way to process those oversensory, my emotions. I'm so emotional. I'm so sensitive. I could cry, I could laugh. I'm just in touch with my emotions also.
Yeah.
And meditation, like I said, gave me that calm. But then, in meditation, which I know we're going to get to, my voice came to me. Like I felt something in my throat during this meditation. And I had this thought, like, that's weird. And then that evening, this tone started coming out. I felt this urge to sing, which I never felt. Not even to sing, just to like tone, actually, just to like make these sounds coming out. I remember being in my hotel room and I was just toning and I was like, that's weird. My voice sounds different and my tone of my voice sounds different, like a rasp. And that became a meditation for me, this kind of active meditation of toning or chanting, I guess, but there was no meaning to the notes.
Right.
And that led me on this path of just like kind of exploring that, being in my apartment, recording myself, singing, almost rearranging songs that I've known for a long time, and they would come out completely different.
Wow. And
I would listen back and I was like, wait, this is crazy. Like, is this me? Like, this is crazy. And that became, like I said, this meditation, this way of processing that internal life. It was almost like I had this whole internal life, and then suddenly something shifted, and then that internal life became this external life, like through my voice and through my being, and then became living that life. I mean, to go from hiding in my apartment, I wasn't hiding, but I didn't tell a soul. Recording, I had this little recorder that I was taping some of the retreats, and I started recording myself on that little recorder,
really?
which I still have, and it's like this little thing. And then I was listening to that, and I was just, doing that kind of alone. It was like this self-exploration thing. And then that became my main way of self-expression and creative expression.
How did that feel in connection with some of the feelings that you had that we talked about earlier growing up? That sort of sense of dislocation, or maybe not quite having the same spirit as the rest of your family. Did it maybe move you towards feeling a little bit of a reconciliation around those feelings? Did it separate you further from your family or from your prior experience? Or how exactly did you process that with regards to everyone in your life and what your trajectory had been so far?
It's an interesting question. I don't know. I really, like I said, I kept it to myself for a long time. And even when I started kind of coming out with it, I hadn't told my family. I was, and I still am, very into gospel music, and Aretha Franklin's gospel album. That is the best album. I mean, did you see the movie?
No, I've heard about that, and I'm doggone mad that I haven't seen it.
It's so amazing. Like I cried. I mean,
wow.
It was so meaningful to actually see something that you've been listening to for so many years. So that actually really, I was really in that at that time. Again, in my spirituality, and that was like also listening to that was an expression of that spirituality and like devotion and love.
Right.
And also, it was like that music and that album especially helping me deal with that loneliness or displacement or dislocation that, you know, not knowing what I'm doing, trying to trust, but that was difficult. Just to know what I was doing in my life. And so in terms of my family, like I actually, well, from that album, when I first started coming out with my voice, I auditioned for a gospel choir. That was my first outing.
Wow.
Wild.
Yeah, so tell us. No, I've got to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I found this ad on Craigslist like 2 a.m. I did everything in the middle of the night. Everything was like I was just up all night. Craigslist in the dark, you know, like what can I find on Craigslist? And I found this audition at this church in the city in New York, and I showed up and I was like, I saw like you're looking, you know, can I audition? And they were like, we don't know what you're talking about. There's no ad on Craigslist. And I was like, well, that's how I got here. And it was this really weird thing that like I showed up and to the service. And anyway, I loved it. It was called Expansion Church. I loved it. And then they had auditions like maybe a month later, and I got in and I was amazed. I mean, the music they had, Will Stone was the director of the choir, and it was so wonderful to be with these people in the choir, to sing and to express. And that is kind of, I think, how I first told my family that I was singing. I had this demo of myself on guitar singing a cover of Bob Dylan, and I sent it to my mother. I didn't say anything, and I sent it to her, and she's like, wow, this is a beautiful singer. Like, is that you playing guitar? Like, she didn't think that was me. She thought I was playing guitar on the track. And I was like, oh, that's me. Like, it was so that was kind of that kind of journey.
How did it feel after all of this, the very first time you stood up in front of that congregation in the church, in that choir, and opened your mouth and started to sing in front of an audience?
I mean, I think I could cry now thinking about it, because I don't know if it was about the audience, but it was about just this connection, this connectivity between all of us and why we were there, and connecting in the love that we had inside of us. It was like a New Thought church. It's not really like traditional in the sense, but it was people from all walks of life, and to be able to like use my voice and like be with this group, which became family to me, like that, it was beautiful.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Wow. Wow. Now, you mentioned a little bit earlier, and I've seen this also in some other interviews of yours that I've read, that as you got more and more into music, there was an internal identity shift. Talk to us a little bit more about what that felt like, and was that identity shift one that you just sort of, you know, gleefully slipped into, like, you know, that Oscar or that Grammy ball gown that you'll be wearing one day? Or was it something a little bit more challenging? What was that like?
It was challenging, actually. I mean, to have never been able to hold a tune, and then to be able to sing and arrange and all this stuff that was happening, it was kind of a mind fuck, honestly.
Yeah.
It was, though, because it was, like I said, like, singing and whatever musically was this kind of meditation. But if I started thinking during the song, or if I started like thinking like, and I would, because I would be in my apartment, like I said, and I would suddenly be like, oh my God. Like, honestly, my stomach just dropped telling you this story, because it was crazy to me. And I was like, who is this? Who am I? What is this? Is this real? Like, I was just like processing all these questions, and I was freaked out. I was freaked out because it was a huge shift for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't relate to my voice at all. I mean, it just came. So I didn't feel like it was me or mine, or like integrated. And I say me and mine in quotes because it's you know, gods, or, you know, the infinite, or,
yes.
you know, whatever the word is, love,
yes.
or whatever, oneness. So I just didn't relate to it. And it freaked me out. At one point, it freaked me out so bad that I actually took a break from singing, because I was like, actually, I'm really freaked out right now. I don't know how to deal. I mean, who do you even talk to?
Right.
Therapist? Like, who are you talking to about, oh, by the way? I also thought, like, did I sound crazy? Like, I sound crazy. Like, I was meditating, and then suddenly, and people believe me, but, like, if you could hear me even sing Happy Birthday back then, I can't even hold a tune. So it was weird for me. And then I got back slowly, and I was like, no, this is a part of me.
Yeah.
It's a gift. It's a part of me. I don't understand it. I'll probably never understand it. And that's okay most of the time. And, you know, let me just receive and be grateful and be in gratitude and express, okay, I don't know why this is here, but like, now that it's here, like, what wants to come out, what wants to be expressed, what wants, you know, and those were deep emotions for me.
Michelle, what does purpose mean to you?
I think purpose to me means what is in your heart. And what is that? What's in your heart? I think really, I mean, in simple terms, what is in your heart? What's in my heart? For me, I think, like I just said, like being grateful for like all of this.
Yeah.
We didn't really kind of go into it, but you know, as cheesy as it could sound, I want to make the world a better place. I want to make animals' lives better. I want to make people's lives better. I want to love and care and connect.
Well, it isn't cheesy at all. And I found it very interesting that during the preparation for this interview, there were a couple of things I asked you if you wanted to talk about. And there were two that you made very clear that were things that spoke to you. And one was the idea that every human being matters. I couldn't help to think about that in light of what you just said a second ago, as well as your own extensive involvement in philanthropy. I mean, I could go into some detail about that. I mentioned, you know, the women's empowerment philanthropy that you've been involved in, the animal rights activism that you've been involved in. You were involved with activism related to the recovery from Hurricane Sandy, if I believe. You've also given donations to domestic violence shelter providers. So this is a very deep and rich philanthropic commitment that you've made in your life. Every human being matters. What's the origin of your strong feeling about that?
I think really the origin would be the opposite feeling. Maybe a deep loneliness that I had when I was younger, that was so empty and alone. And and kind of just that immense loneliness. And I think that being in that, going through that, and really back to music in my times that I was most alone, I had that. That was the only thing I had that sometimes, that I think a lot of people relate to that, meaning they've been through that. I think that and I think coming out of that time and seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, you know, I feel that these types of emotions bring us together as like this commonality between all of us as human beings. I'm a deep feeling person, like I said, and I'm very empathetic. Part of my deep loneliness was also empathy. Seeing people, feeling everything, feeling literally every single thing. But that was my way of connecting to people. It's calmed down now. I've learned how to kind of handle those feelings and those connections, but I feel a deep connection. I mean, to every person. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but it's like we're all humans on this planet. We're all trying to do the best we can, and I think that's the connection for me. If that makes any sense.
It totally does, and it's actually really powerful. One question that I have back for you about it is whether, from your perspective and in your experience, that level of empathy is a burden or a gift.
I think that has changed, that answer, over the years. I think that it was, for sure, I experienced it as a burden. That kind of sensitivity. I think a lot of people struggle with that empathy, feeling that it's an overwhelming feeling. I think meditation, like I said, really helped me kind of almost calm my own senses, almost like put like on, it was like a jacket, you know, it was like, oh, this can be me and this is you, and, you know, boundaries or just ways to process. I definitely think of it as a gift now. I mean, I think it's why and how I connect to people who are listening to my music. It's how I connect to musicians, and forget music, just people.
I'm hearing themes of loneliness, of empathy, of feeling on the outside, of meditating to get a leveling of some of these feelings. A story about singing in a choir and feeling this sense of communion with the entire congregation and shared love. I'm also getting a sense of a sudden finding of a voice. Do you see a through line there?
Ursula, you're making me cry right now.
Well, you know what? I've been crying a little bit inside when you're talking about some of this stuff because it's powerful. So we'll just tell everyone who's watching, my tears and my emotion, they're just allergies because, you know, it's a fall-like day today. But I say this seriously because what I'm doing is I'm feeling through what you're bringing into the interview, all of these emotions as well. And when I listen to your music, I feel it too. What are your thoughts hearing all of that?
I think it's beautiful. I mean, I've known you a long time, and I have always felt so connected to you. And I think that you have this gift of really seeing people. And I think when someone is seen, and when I feel seen, it's emotional. There's that connection in that moment. So I feel, you know.
When your audience listens to your music and reacts the same way that I do, how do you feel?
amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
Let's talk a little bit about 2020, because I think your adventure this year has been one worth talking about. So, you had released a couple of singles in 2019, which I love, by the way, and they're on your website, which are in the show notes, and everyone should take a listen to. And then you recorded a Depeche Mode cover. Talk to us a little bit about that.
That was so fun. I was kind of, it kind of got in my head one day, personal Jesus.
Yes.
And then I was just singing in my car and singing while I was cooking, like singing while I was doing this, and like, you know what I mean? And then I was like, oh, like, what if this was like a cover I did? What if I like put this in the live show? And I reached out to Neil Rimbaldi. He's amazing guitar player and writer and composer, and who I've been playing with for a long time. And I was like, what do you think about this? And then he had sent me his guitar arrangement, which is what you hear on the track. And I remember I was in my kitchen cooking, listening in the background, just seeing kind of like what came out of me, like what was going to come out vocally. And what you hear on the track is really what came out.
Amazing.
That night. So yeah, it was pretty incredible. So it was in the live set, and I was just loving it so much. And then Aaron came in, who's my producer and co-writer on Smoking Gun and Hurt Me. We were like, let's record it, let's see, and that's kind of, where it started.
Well, then you really tickled my fancy, and you tickled the fancy of many other people in my circles when all of a sudden I started reading about these utterly banging, top-tier EDM people coming in and remixing it. How was it to hear that different version of it? And then what happened with that song once those remixes came out?
I love hearing those versions. I love hearing kind of, honestly, like any version of me that somebody like is like, oh, well, this is cool. Like, let me just like shift it to this. It's so awesome. I mean, it was fun, right? Like you hear that and you just want to dance. So yeah, I debuted on the Billboard Dance Club chart at 46, and then I continued to climb, and I made it to number four, which is amazing. And then the charts froze. Yeah,
the charts were suspended, right?
For the pandemic, yeah.
And let's talk about that, because, I think that just as an outsider, if it had been me, I had a song in the top 5 of Billboard's dance chart, which, by the way, we both know is an influential chart because it is, right, that's the sort of the future of music, and it tends to be very progressive and has a very wide audience. And then all of a sudden, right when it's about to hit the pinnacle, right? And you're up there, by the way, with Diana Ross. Right.
Incredible.
Then all of a sudden, it freezes. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Let me first say, obviously, my first priority and thoughts in those moments were people that were getting sick in the world and what was happening, people losing their jobs and their livelihoods and just everything going to a stop. I had at that time been working on, I was about to be on like a tour, dance club tour, basically performing one of the remixes. I had been training for like 2 months. I had dancers. I had a whole routine. I was ready. I was April 6th was my first performance, and I was so excited. I mean, I had never done anything like this before. I had never danced before on a stage. Like I was like, it reminded me of singing for the first time because I was like, wow, like we just keep growing as people. Like if you push yourself, who knows what's there? And so that was, I was like dying over that this was like, wow, I was like, oh my God, this is like my life. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And then that happened and I was like, oh my God. You know, I deal with anxiety. I deal with anxiety that sometimes can borderline into panic attacks. And I was in a pretty panicky mode with when the news of the virus and what was happening and not knowing anything. So there was this panic about our health and safety.
Yes.
That was the majority, and that I work with this rescue called Deli the Street Dog, and who's run by Jessica Hassman, and she transports dogs from India. I personally transported dogs from India for myself for Animal Haven in New York a few months before, and so these dogs were arriving in LA like the day of the lockdown, and we went to the airport. I mean, it was actually frightening for me because here are these dogs. You don't know if it's airborne. You don't know anything.
Yeah.
And
at that time,
you're
especially
showing up for these animals. You had no idea.
Yeah.
Didn't want to touch anything. You know, it was just this panic. So I was dealing with those feelings.
Yeah.
With music, and over the course of those months, it was very disappointing. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How has the whole situation this year, if at all, affected your own thinking about music, your own voice? And talk to us a little bit about what you're looking forward to happening in 2021.
I think with music, I think when the lockdowns were first happening, you know, I saw so many fellow artists, like of any level or anything, doing amazing things like lives and Instagram lives, Facebook lives, concerts, that stuff like that. I personally, I couldn't get there personally.
Yeah.
I was feeling just like I need to take care of myself. If I'm kind of dealing with levels of anxiety like that, I can't create. I mean, and that took me a while to kind of accept and not judge myself, because they think that this whole pandemic, people, what are you going to do at this time? Like, are you writing or recording? And I have been writing, and I was writing, but that kind of that like pressure to create.
Yeah.
And I let that pressure in also. And then I was like, you know what, actually, this is okay. Like, I know myself. If I'm dealing with those feelings, I can write, but sometimes I can't. Yeah. So music was in the creative process was like very different for me this year. Yeah. Saying that, I did write 2 songs that are not finished, and that's okay also, that I really love. For 2021, I hope to continue this journey. I mean, first of all, I hope that we all continue our journeys in the best health, and that we can get back to a new, better normal.
Yes.
For music plans, I hope to continue, get the band back together, literally, and see where it goes. You know, one day at a time.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. One last question before we close out this little trip on the Purpose Highway. You mentioned that we can hopefully get back to a new, better normal. If you just have 2 cents about what might make that new normal a little bit better, share it with us.
I think that this year put a lot in perspective for people, like what was important to them and what really is not important. And for me, that hope would be that I could carry, and that everybody carries, like what's really important to them from their hearts into the world. And that's what I think would make it a new, better normal.
And that's what it's all about. Michelle,
Yeah.
tell us where we can find out more about you. What are your social media handles? Tell us where your website is. Anything else you want us to know about you and how anyone watching or listening can soak in more of your Michelle Kashness?
Thank you. So my channels are Michelle Kash Music on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. My website is michellekash.com. And so you could hear all my music, Spotify. I'm on all platforms, Apple Music, Amazon. You could hear all my music. And I have a bunch of music that has not been released yet that I'm really excited about also, actually.
Oh, good.
No plan yet, but it's there, and it's there ready to go. And yeah, listen to Personal Jesus. Let me know what you think. Follow me on Instagram and reach out. Send me a message. Happy to talk.
And please do listen to Personal Jesus, folks. I've got to say, it is so good. I might have to go and do a little twirl behind the curtain here the minute this is over. Everybody, Michelle, it has been wonderful taking a trip down the Purpose Highway with you. Thank you for joining me. Everybody, we will see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Join our community today at purposehighway.com and subscribe to get notified when new episodes go live. Scott Mason, checking out.